The primary objective of this talk is pretty much I'm doing my day job as Principal Program Manager for Java on Azure at Microsoft. I'm going to be sharing with you the work that we are doing on behalf of Java EE developers and Java EE customers at Microsoft. And also, part of the objective here is not just a one-way street in terms of telling you what's going on, but also this is your opportunity to engage with me, engage with us as Microsoft, and tell us what you would like to see us be doing. And at the end of the talk, I'll provide a concrete mechanism that hopefully you'll be able to do just that. So in the next 25 minutes or so, this is my plan for you. We'll be talking a little bit of the Java ecosystem context. I think all of the work we do is in the context of a broader ecosystem, and it helps to understand, at least from the Microsoft perspective, what that ecosystem view is. We'll be talking about what is currently possible today, and a lot of it is possible. So one thing that we should acknowledge here is Microsoft traditionally has not really focused on Java EE, or even broader, in broader terms, the Java ecosystem. But I think in equal terms, you also have to say that, as you'll see in a moment, I suspect we're doing much more than even some of the core traditional Java players to better serve Java developers and Java EE developers. And in that vein, I'll finish off by talking about what is the work that we still have to do and how you can potentially help us. So the ecosystem view, as you know, Java EE remains important. If you have any doubts whatsoever, you really should not. Even now, there's between 25% and 35% of Java workloads that work on application servers. We see these type of workloads on Azure all the time, more and more, even us in the state that we are in, that we're not necessarily seen as sort of the center of the Java universe. Even we see these sorts of workloads come our way. It's very, very much relevant. Of course, outside of the Java EE application server realm, Java EE is even more important. You know, there's almost every single server-side Java developer is using Java EE APIs in one shape or form or the other, whether they realize it or not. So tremendously important ecosystem. It's also a very healthy, diverse ecosystem. It is evolving. We are taking a look at some of these evolutions. We'll talk about this very briefly towards the end of the section. But certainly things we are keeping attention to is things like Quarkus and Microprofile and Helidon and all of the other interesting things that are going on that are bringing this ecosystem, thriving ecosystem forward. So there's some data there. You can take a look at the Jakarta EE developer survey. I think there's some very interesting insights there worth looking at. So as we also probably know, this is an ecosystem in positive transition. You know, this is, I'm proud to say I had something to do with this. So Java EE is no longer Java EE. It's now in its new reincarnation as Jakarta EE, much more open, truly multilateral under the Eclipse Foundation. There'll be Jakarta E9 almost at the door. Actually, I was hoping to say, you know, we don't have to say Java EE anymore. We can just say Jakarta EE because the transition is complete. But it is going to be complete in very, very, very soon. And of course, hopefully next year, we will see a Jakarta E10 release that will add more innovation features and really make the transition solidify. And at that point in time, I'll probably rename this talk to you know, Jakarta EE roadmap rather than Java EE roadmap. But so far, I think pretty much Java EE still is the mainstream technology that we are targeting, at least from a Microsoft standpoint, right at this moment. So I think one of the reports that really do a good job of crystallizing these sorts of evolutions is the InfoQ one from this year. Basically, Jakarta EE hasn't quite crossed the chasm yet. If it were, as I said, I'll probably have renamed the talk of the title in terms of Jakarta EE, but it is getting there, and there's also healthy evolution and newer parts of the ecosystem that are bringing fresh ideas and fresh perspectives into the into the ecosystem that we're keeping an eye on. Okay, so this is the current state. It's sort of I intended this sort of as a map. These are basically the different pathways that you can enter Azure or enter in general any cloud, and these are the sort of components in that pathway. These are the actors in that pathway that we observe. Again, this is based on not just industry data but observable data in our own customer domain. So you have virtual machines, you have containers, namely things like Docker, Kubernetes, OpenShift. You also have managed services or PaaS, so entirely managed platforms. These are the three different arcs in our pathway. In virtual machines, we have a decent story. I'll talk about that in a second, but these are the players that ultimately we need to think about in the virtual machine space. Same thing for containers and Kubernetes, and the other thing for managed services. Now, one thing I'll note here is the Pyara folks. I won't be talking about Pyara too much, but I will say this during this particular slide. They're actually one of the players that have gone above and beyond in terms of supporting Azure by themselves. They've done so much. Honestly, we don't even need to do so much on our end because they've already cleared all of these pathways, the majority of these pathways in terms of Azure. So that's the reason I won't mention them, but you're well served on Azure if you're a Pyara customer in particular because of the work that they've done proactively, even aside from Microsoft. So virtual machines, this is like the poor man's way into the cloud, if you will, but it's tremendously important. To be honest, this is probably one of the continues to be the biggest revenue maker in terms of Microsoft, of how people are using the cloud. This is just VMs on somebody else's cloud, in this case on Azure's cloud. So obviously, the basic thing that Microsoft has done, for a while now, you've seen Satya's statements about Microsoft loves Linux and so on. That is the key crux that actually enables this entire Java on Azure and Java EE on Azure story, right? So having all of these mainstream Linux runtimes, all of the popular ones, in addition to Windows, really is what powers all of this work from happening. But aside from that, we actually also have this concept of virtual machine images and solution templates, right? So you have the virtual machine images, and in fact, we have more or less virtual machine images for a majority of the application servers. But we also have this, again, this capability of further building on that, so to give you a blend of a PaaS experience and a virtual machine experience through these virtual machine templates. And a good example of that is the work that we are doing with WebLogic that enables you not to just have these images, but also do much more powerful things based on these images, like very easily be able to create clusters, very easily be able to integrate with load balancing on all of the Azure services. Now, there are gaps here. As you can see in this picture, we currently do not have a virtual machine image for the WebSphere family, which something we're working on. I'll talk about that in a second. Currently, the JBoss and WildFly images, those are third-party images. These are not first-party images where we have, it is a result of a robust partnership between Red Hat and Microsoft. But again, these are things that we're working on, and I'll talk about that in a second. So I talked about the robust partnership that we do have with the WebLogic team and the work we are doing there. So we have had a couple of strong releases of this offering. So basically, these are robust, up-to-date, jointly developed and supported VM-based offerings for WebLogic. It supports a number of use cases, so definitely base image, definitely spinning up a simple single instance very, very quickly, clustering, load balancing, integration with Azure Gateway in terms of load balancing, integration with all of our database service offerings, including also integration with Oracle DB on either Azure VMs or the Oracle Cloud via our interconnect, integration with Active Directory. So a whole bunch of use cases already covered. Please try this out. I think you might be pleased, especially if you're a WebLogic developer. There's a quick link to this. You'll see it in the slide. I'll share a link to the slide towards the end of the talk, so you can quickly explore this and take a look at it for yourself. There's also similar work that we're planning to do with WebLogic on Kubernetes, or WebLogic on AKS in particular, in terms of Azure. Okay, so Azure also is a very good home if you're a container developer, right? So we have a best-of-breed Kubernetes implementation called the Azure Kubernetes Service. We also have a container registry to go along with that. It's called the Azure Container Registry. And if you don't want to do all of that, another nice option is if you just want to use Docker and don't want to use full-blown orchestration, app service for containers is a good choice for that. So typically, what application servers vendors do in order to provide robust support for containerization is first and foremost, provide Docker images. But above and beyond that, in order to better support orchestration, the application servers can offer Helm charts and ultimately Kubernetes operators that often built upon Helm charts. And the majority of the Java EE application servers are no slouches. They're doing just all of those things for you, right? So JBoss EAP, WildFly, WebLogic, WebSphere, OpenLiberty, all of the mainstream Java EE players have some kind of robust containerization and orchestration and Kubernetes story there. Now, you could, again, do a lot of this yourself. So if you have the foundational infrastructure, just like in VMs, in theory, you could be doing anything you want. But in reality, there's also things we could be doing on our end to make that pathway as easy as possible. And we have begun that work as well. In particular, we have a reasonably robust story with the WebLogic team that's going to get even more robust. But we've also started the story for the WebSphere and OpenLiberty suite as well. I'll talk about that in a second. So there are gaps here and areas of improvement, but again, relatively strong story here as well. Speaking of, let's talk briefly about our WebLogic and AKS work. So what we are doing here is basically WebLogic has a very well constructed operator. We are working to we are actually now officially supporting that operator on AKS. We've tested and validated that it works. It's fully supported by both Microsoft and Oracle. You'll see a short link to that work, and we've also provided some scripts examples and guidance to help you along that path if you want. But again, we are looking to create something similar to what we've done for virtual machines using the marketplace template solution. In other words, abstracting all of this work so that it just becomes sort of foundational infrastructure rather than something you need to consciously think about doing. Right? So please explore that work. OpenShift is reasonably popular, at least with some segment of the market. So this is basically an abstraction layer above Kubernetes. And this abstraction provides a number of essentially points of flexibility, right? So you can have multi-cloud, you can move between cloud providers, you can have hybrid deployments between your local data center and the cloud. So a number of use cases are enabled through Kubernetes to some extent, but also through OpenShift. So actually, I believe outside of the Red Hat cloud, Microsoft was one of the first cloud vendors to provide a managed Red Hat OpenShift offering. So we do have that. And in that Red Hat OpenShift offering, you have all of the major images available through in that Red Hat OpenShift offerings, things like JBoss EAP, Liberty, OpenLiberty. But again, the foundational infrastructure is there, but we could be doing more, right? So in fact, we are doing more, specifically with the OpenLiberty and WebSphere Liberty team, to better improve and smooth out that pathway for you as well. In terms of managed services, this is traditionally a strong point for Azure. If you were to say, okay, what makes Azure special, this would be one of the talking points, is we have a number of robust PaaS offerings. So for a while, we didn't have a managed Java EE PaaS offering. This was sort of a focus area for us for a little while, but no longer. We actually have finally a JBoss EAP on App Service. So this is our App Service is our premier managed services platform, and now we have support for JBoss EAP on that. It's still in public preview. Hopefully, it will go GA very soon. Right now, it's very good for the stateless use cases. So it's stateless, load balanced, auto-deployed, auto-scaled, monitored. Again, it's jointly developed through partnerships with Oracle. Not often, but almost always when we're doing this work, we're doing it along with a partner in the Java ecosystem. Again, this is something you should try out, give us feedback, improve it, make it GA, and get it ready for a production release, hopefully soon, out of public preview. But this is an area that really could use your active feedback. Okay. Another very interesting and I think very useful offering is JMS support in Azure Service Bus. So Azure Service Bus, if you're not familiar with it, is basically the de facto managed messaging platform on Azure. You can run other messaging solutions, but this is basically the flagship messaging product, if you will. It is rooted in .NET, so a lot of Java developers are probably not familiar with it for that reason. But that hopefully is changing now, especially with this offering. So now we have a public preview of JMS2 support in Azure Service Bus. So this was possible for some time because Azure Service Bus foundationally supports AMQP, and if you use Apache Cupid, you can have a bridge between JMS and AMQP. But the problem was that Azure Service Bus did not fully implement JMS. So now, hopefully by December, we're going to be announcing full compatibility with JMS and taking this feature out of public preview into GA, hopefully no later than, let's say, early next year. And that will make it possible to be consumable in all kinds of applications, certainly including Java EE applications. Of course, this is not the only way of accessing Service Bus. For example, Service Bus has had a sort of native Java API for a little while. But again, if you're interested in this, please check out the link, try it out, give us feedback, engage us. Okay, so I won't have time to demo this. I'm just going to show you the location of this demo. If I had enough time, I would do this demo for you. But please go take a look at this GitHub example. It's basically, if you've done nothing with Azure at all, and if you're a Java EE developer, if you try this demo out, it'll at least give you a flavor for how your experience might look like. So take a look at that. All right, so I think this is a good point for us to talk about the future and what is it that we are working on currently as opposed to what we've already done. So this is another map, and this one is going to be an annotated map. So as we talked about, there's certain areas where we've made pretty good progress, right? Already talked about, I think, probably better progress than most of the mainstream cloud vendors out there. WebLogic on virtual machines, the JBoss EAP on app service offering, the JMS support in Azure Service Bus. Those are all very strong progress, I would say. There are areas that we are working on. Talked about some of this already, right? So we're doing some work to improve our virtual machine support for JBoss EAP. We're doing similar work for WebSphere traditional on virtual machines. And again, we have doing some similar work to better enable WildFly on virtual machines as well. Same story for JBoss on OpenShift. In the images there, there's room for improvement on how that could be better. There's some basic work that we've done in terms of guidance for running WildFly on AKS that could use more improvement and be more robust, and we're working on that. We are actively working on the WebSphere Liberty team to improve our support for running WebSphere Liberty on OpenShift. I'll talk about that work in just a moment. And of course, there are some gaps as well. These are things we will address as we go along. These are areas that we're aware of that we need to work on. So that would be JBoss EAP on AKS, WebSphere Liberty on AKS. We'll tackle that right after we address WebSphere Liberty and Open Liberty on OpenShift. Our next target is doing the same for AKS. And Azure Redis is a particularly interesting one, especially for Java developers. Redis is surprisingly popular, and there's many different ways you can use Redis. You can use Redis as an app server cache. You can use Redis as a Hibernate second tier cache, or you can use Redis directly through Jcache. So these are some of the use cases that we already know that our customers want and are doing to some extent by themselves, and things that we are mindful of and we will try to address. Okay, so already talked about the WebLogic on virtual machines work. Just to visualize that, we've done quite a bit of progress here already. The things that are not quite done yet, and we are working on, is integrating Oracle coherence support within that offer, virtual machines offer, adding support for nice integration with the ELK stack, which is tremendously popular with Java developers on Azure, and also providing some additional migration tooling and guidance. There is some migration guidance overall. Wherever we feel like we have sufficient material, we tend to write higher level migration guides for that pathway. So again, we'll continue to do that here in addition to doing migration tooling. Okay, so the WebLogic and AKS work, again, we've done some work here. We've certified that it works. We have provided some simple guidance to integrate with things like Azure Files as a persistent volume and be able to run WebLogic clusters in a robust way on AKS. but there's a lot of other work that is still on our horizon, namely making sure that all of these other integrations all work for you in a robust fashion. So we have initiated the work with the WebSphere and Open Liberty team to enable OpenShift to start with. Right, so over here, we have enabled so far that we're going to announce very, very soon. So this is almost late breaking news, is to enable very easily running a WebSphere or Open Liberty cluster on OpenShift. So this is guidance to smooth out all of the rough edges in the experience. We've also done some initial work to demonstrate how to integrate Open Liberty and WebSphere Liberty with Azure Active Directory. Of course, that leaves out a bunch of other integrations, namely integration with a full suite of databases, including DB2, as well as already talked about ELK. In terms of caching, we want to support Azure Red Hat Data Grid running on OpenShift, as well as Redis. Right? So this is a case where WebSphere and Open Liberty, because of its pluggable nature, can actually support Redis as a second level cache. Okay, so talked about the initial work that we're doing to enable WildFly and JBoss EAP a bit better on virtual machines. So this will hopefully turn into jointly developed and fully jointly supported virtual machines, and hopefully down the line solution templates for running the software on Azure, as opposed to the third-party offerings that are there right at this moment. It's still a work in progress. So right now there is quick start templates under the hood. Basically, all of the things that are in Marketplace are actually quick start templates. So this is a good initial first step to get us there. Right now it's community provided, but we're going to make this more robust and make it a joint offering, just like we're doing for WebLogic, joint offering between Red Hat and Microsoft. Okay. So I'm going to finish up here. So basically, the basic message here: we are here for you. We're doing as best as we can to make these use cases robust. We need your help, and there is a way you can engage with us. Right? So you can fill out the survey, and you can provide your feedback on what you would like to see in terms of Java EE on Azure success. But more importantly, if you would like to engage with our team and help you in a migration scenario by providing whatever you need, and in the process improving our offerings, that is something we would very much like to do. So if you take one thing out of this talk, please take away this survey link, fill out the survey, leave us our contact information, and begin engaging with us and working with us. So again, we're working to enable all of the pathways, including containers and virtual machines. The PaaS is on the way, and integrations are also there for the most part, but again, we are working to improve all of those stories as well. So I'll leave you with a few links. I won't describe these links here. They're largely announcement links, official announcement links for all of the things that I talked about. Right, WebLogic on VMs, JBoss EAP on App Service, so on. So please take a look at all of those. See what you think of them. And again, most importantly, engage us. So I think that is all I have. I'm just about at time. And what I'm going to do here is in the chat, I will leave the URL for this talk, just so you guys can take a look at it, and also refer to the material that I talked about.
All right. Thank you, Rez. I'm going to paste this on the YouTube chat, Rez's deck. And please feel free to also share on your Twitter account. I know you have a GitHub profile as well with demos. If you can point that when you tweet or post on LinkedIn, like the deck and the GitHub samples that you have for Azure and Java EE stuff, that'd be great.
Sure.
I got one question here in the chat on the YouTube live stream. Does Microsoft plan to become a strategic Eclipse member and participate at Jakarta EE working group?
So that's an interesting question. I'll answer it from a personal standpoint and a Microsoft standpoint. So, from a personal standpoint, I sure do hope so, right? Because I definitely think we can make a difference there and become truly a core part of the very important section of the Java ecosystem. From a business standpoint, I think we first need to make the business case, right? So this is where we need people to engage with us and tell us our pain points and really prove out the case that there is a business to be made here. There's a market to be made here. There's mindshare to be won here, right? So the way to make that case, begin to make that case, is engaging with us, and that's how we make the business case for Microsoft, or making that happen beyond simply my opinion or somebody else's opinion.
I do recall that the JMS support on Azure Service Bus came because of customers asking for it, right? They had their legacy applications, they wanted to bring them to Azure, but they wanted to leverage Azure services and the Azure platform in general for their scenarios. And that was one of their one example. That's one example of that sort of engagement that you were expecting, that customers and developers come to Microsoft and say, hey, I would like to develop Java EE. Can you make my life easier? And we saw that happening with JMS on Service Bus. And hopefully we're going to see that with other parts of Java and Jakarta EE as well. And as you said, justifies our participation in the working group at the Eclipse Foundation.
Plenty of examples. Yeah, JBoss EAP on app services, and you could cite many examples of this, but that is really the key, is engaging with us.